North Korea remains one of the most isolated and economically controlled nations on Earth, where the state theoretically manages every aspect of commerce and distribution. Yet beneath this rigid facade exists a thriving shadow economy that has become essential to the survival of ordinary citizens. Among the many curious windows into this hidden world, few are as unexpectedly revealing as ice cream. This seemingly simple treat has become an informal economic indicator, offering insights into the health and evolution of North Korea's black markets, the changing tastes of its emerging middle class, and the complex relationship between official state control and the pragmatic realities of daily survival. To understand why ice cream matters in North Korea, we must first grasp the broader context of the country's economic transformation. Following the devastating famine of the mid-1990s, known euphemistically as the Arduous March, the North Korean state's public distribution system essentially collapsed. Millions perished as the government could no longer provide basic rations to its citizens. In the face of this catastrophe, people had no choice but to find alternative means of survival. What emerged from this desperate period was an extensive network of informal markets, known as Jangmadang, which gradually became woven into the fabric of North Korean society. These markets started as desperate exchanges of goods and services, but evolved into sophisticated commercial networks where everything from Chinese electronics to South Korean soap operas changes hands. The ice cream indicator specifically refers to the observation that ice cream availability, variety, and consumption patterns reflect broader economic trends within North Korea's black market economy. Unlike essential goods such as rice or fuel, ice cream is a luxury item, a discretionary purchase that people make only when they have disposable income beyond their basic survival needs. When ice cream vendors proliferate in the markets and streets of Pyongyang and other cities, when the varieties expand beyond basic flavors, and when prices remain stable or even decrease, these signals suggest that informal economic activity is flourishing and that at least some segments of the population have money to spend on non-essentials. Observers and defectors have reported significant changes in North Korea's ice cream landscape over the past 2 decades. In the early 2000s, ice cream was a rare treat, typically only available during summer months and often of poor quality. The few state-run shops that sold frozen desserts operated sporadically due to unreliable electricity. However, as the Jangmadang economy matured and Chinese goods flooded across the border, entrepreneurs found ways to manufacture and distribute ice cream more consistently. Small-scale producers began making ice cream using imported ingredients and equipment, storing it in generators or solar-powered freezers to circumvent the chronic electricity shortages. By the 2000s, reports indicated that ice cream had become noticeably more common in urban areas, with vendors selling it year-round in some locations. The evolution of ice cream in North Korea also reflects the emergence of a nascent consumer culture among what might loosely be called a middle class. While extreme inequality persists and the majority of North Koreans remain desperately poor, a segment of the urban population has accumulated wealth through market activities. These donju, or money masters, have made fortunes through trading, lending, and various quasi-legal business ventures. Their families, along with those of certain privileged officials, now constitute a consumer class with purchasing power unprecedented in North Korean history. For this group, ice cream is no longer a rare luxury but an expected amenity, and they demand variety and quality. This consumer demand has driven innovation even within North Korea's constrained environment. Entrepreneurs have developed local ice cream brands, sometimes using domestically produced milk from state farms that they've purchased through informal channels. Others import frozen desserts from China, repackaging them or selling them directly. The regime itself has taken notice of this market opportunity, with state-owned enterprises launching their own ice cream brands and opening modern ice cream parlors in Pyongyang. These establishments cater to the elite and serve as propaganda showcases, demonstrating the supposed prosperity and modernity of the capital city. However, the state operations often coexist with and even rely upon the informal market for supplies and distribution. Geographical distribution of ice cream availability tells its own story about North Korea's internal inequalities. Pyongyang, as the showcase capital, enjoys relatively better access to consumer goods, including ice cream. Visitors to the city have documented numerous ice cream vendors and shops, particularly in areas frequented by the elite and foreign visitors. Moving beyond Pyongyang to secondary cities and especially to rural areas, ice cream becomes progressively scarcer and more expensive. This pattern mirrors the broader structure of North Korea's economy, where resources and opportunities concentrate in the capital while the periphery struggles. The presence or absence of something as simple as ice cream thus maps onto deeper patterns of privilege and deprivation. The ice cream indicator also reveals important information about cross-border trade and North Korea's economic dependence on China. Most of the ingredients for ice cream, from milk powder to sugar to flavoring agents, come from China through both official and unofficial channels. When relations between Pyongyang and Beijing are good and border trade flows freely, ice cream becomes more available and affordable. Conversely, when tensions rise or when China enforces sanctions more strictly, the supply chains that feed the ice cream trade constrict. This dynamic became particularly evident during the COVID-19 pandemic, when North Korea sealed its borders almost completely. Reports from inside the country indicated that imported goods became scarce and expensive, and luxury items like ice cream largely disappeared from the markets. This sudden absence demonstrated how dependent even seemingly domestic industries had become on the informal cross-border economy. The regime's relationship with ice cream and the markets that distribute it reflects the broader contradictions in North Korea's economic policy. Officially, the government maintains that it provides for all the needs of its citizens, and that market activity is merely supplementary. In reality, the leadership knows that the Jangmadang have become indispensable, and that any attempt to suppress them completely would risk triggering another famine or even social unrest. The state has therefore adopted an ambivalent approach, periodically cracking down on market activities while simultaneously tolerating and even participating in them. Ice cream sits in an interesting middle ground in this dynamic because it's neither politically sensitive nor essential to survival, making it relatively safe for the regime to allow its production and sale while still maintaining the fiction of state control. Kim Jong-un's leadership has seen a subtle shift in the regime's approach to consumer goods and markets. Unlike his father, Kim Jong-il, who was more ideologically rigid, Kim Jong-un has shown a pragmatic recognition that limited consumer satisfaction can help stabilize his rule. Under his leadership, Pyongyang has seen the opening of amusement parks, ski resorts, and modern shopping areas, all of which serve ice cream and other treats. These projects serve multiple purposes. They provide leisure options for the elite whose support Kim Jong-un needs. They create propaganda images of prosperity and normalcy, and they generate revenue for the regime. The ice cream sold in these venues becomes part of a carefully crafted narrative about North Korea's development and the benevolence of its leadership. However, the ice cream indicator should not be misinterpreted as evidence of widespread prosperity or fundamental economic reform. The majority of North Koreans remain poor, with limited access to anything beyond basic necessities. The markets that sell ice cream and other consumer goods operate in a legal gray zone, subject to arbitrary enforcement and the whims of local officials. Vendors must pay bribes and navigate complex informal networks to operate. The women who dominate the market economy, often called market ajumas, face constant risks including confiscation of goods, fines, and even imprisonment. The fact that ice cream circulates in these markets speaks to the resilience and ingenuity of these entrepreneurs, but it also underscores the absence of legal protections and economic rights. The story of ice cream in North Korea also intersects with the regime's efforts to control information and cultural influence. South Korean popular culture has infiltrated North Korea through smuggled USB drives and DVDs, and these materials often depict a lifestyle of abundance and choice, including scenes of people casually enjoying ice cream and other treats. This exposure has created what some scholars call a crisis of expectations, where North Koreans, especially younger people, increasingly compare their circumstances to what they see from the outside world. The regime attempts to satisfy these rising expectations through its own consumer showcases, but the gap remains obvious. Ice cream becomes a small but tangible symbol of this disconnect, a simple pleasure that South Koreans take for granted, but that remains a luxury or impossibility for most North Koreans.